Cyrus Osborne worked for General Motors. More specifically, he worked for the electromotive division, which made locomotive engines. And certainly whenever he was visiting a railroad that bought one of his engines, he got to ride up there in the cab. On one particular trip through the Colorado Glenwood Canyon area, he was looking out the windows of the cab and thought, wouldn't it be great if everybody had this view that I do right now? And he came up with an idea. So he came up with this, the 360-degree view from a glassed-in ceiling atop a regular passenger car. He called it the Vista Dome. And this is our Vista Dome from the California Zephyr, and it's today's episode on our video tour from the Lake Superior Railroad Museum at the temporarily closed St. Louis County Depot here in downtown Duluth. This car is what the Vista Dome was all about. It has 360-degree views through a glass ceiling. You can see all the way around you. You can see where the train is going. You can see where the train has been. It is the best view in the house. And it was a way to try and entice passengers back into trains and keep them out of the skies. Airlines were starting to become a competitor to the airline business, to the train business anyway. This was a way to keep them out of the air and on the train. Airlines were becoming a competitor, and the trains needed something new to compete. And they found it here in the Dome car, because this was like flying at treetop level. Our car was built by the Budd Car Company. It was built in 1948 for the California Zephyr, which was a first-class train featuring five Dome cars in the consist. As it made its way from Chicago to Oakland, California, the route was timed for the best daylight scenery. And that was something new in railroading. Show them the scenery from a Dome car. In 1948, this car 250 was Budd built and called the Silver Club. It was retired to Amtrak when Amtrak was formed in 1971, and then retired from Amtrak in 1981 after 10 years of service. Several different people owned it as a private car until it ended up with our very good friend Dirk Lenthe from Fargo, North Dakota, who donated it to the museum in 2011. Unfortunately, the car had sat outside for several years and had been severely vandalized. What Mr. Lenthe did do is he put in all new glass, and that was great. He also redid the trucks, but left us to deal with the inside of the car. Thanks to some very generous donations from our board of directors, especially Ed Robinson, donations from the Burlington Round Historical Society, and great work by the Friends of 261 down in the Twin Cities, they took this car down to the bare skin and then rebuilt it into the excellence that you see today as our first-class car on the North Shore Scenic Railroad. We're kind of reliving a little bit of that past now as we're redoing some of the carpeting that, well, when you have a first-class car that's as popular as this one, you know, there's only a few Dome cars in America that you can ride on anytime you want, and ours is one of them. Obviously, the wear and tear needs to be taken care of, and that's what we're doing over the winter. We've put in new carpeting, we're redoing the upholstery on the seats, and we even restored one of the roomettes. See, this car was originally built as a Dome crew dormitory car, which meant it had a lounge, it had the Dome, which was the most popular part, and then where our long lounge is today was actually a dormitory for crew members of the California Zephyr, who slept on bunk beds but had a shower. There were two roomettes though, one for the steward and the other for the Zephyrette. We're redoing the car once again. We've put in new carpeting. To do that, we've taken out all the seats in the Dome, putting in new carpeting, new flooring. Well, I'll tell you what, follow me, I'll show you some of the other work we've done. We're at the point right now putting everything back together. All the heavy lifting's been done. We're just gonna put the seats back in, clean it up, and she'll be ready to go for this season. This car looks a little different than when it was on the railroad. For instance, there's a lounge portion forward. That was at one time called the Cable Car Lounge, celebrating scenery from San Francisco. Back where we are, in this part of the car, it was actually a dormitory. It wasn't for the passengers, it was for the workers on the train, who slept in this area on bunk beds. And they had a shower and their own bathroom. What was really neat were the two compartments. There were two compartments on the train. One was for the steward, and the other was for the Zephyrette. This was the Zephyrette's room. She was an early version of the stewardess in the sky. Her job was to be the nurse, although you have to admit her medical training might have been somewhat dubious. But she was the ambassador for the railroad. She was the babysitter. She was the one that made sure on that scenic route you were told when to look out the window to catch all the spectacular scenery. And her main job was to tune the radio in the dome to all the stations along the route that were pre-selected by the railroad, suitable for listening. The Zephyrette was an incredible addition to railroad service, and this was her private room. We've restored it as you see it today. We're on the other side of the car, and this is that cable car lounge that I told you about. Back in the day, of course, it was San Francisco. Here, it's Duluth. We had a cable car of our own called the Incline. So we've named this, in keeping with tradition, the Incline Lounge, as opposed to the cable car lounge. Follow me to the Galley. On the way to the Galley, we passed the other lounge, not the cable car lounge. We named this one after Mr. Lengthy. It's an area underneath the dome. It was also an area where you could get service out of the Galley. At one time, there was a window here, and cocktails and refreshments could be passed through the window to people sitting down here in the Lengthy Lounge. This on the wall is the famous Zephyr. This was the logo for the California Zephyr. Zephyr meaning west wind, and here he is, the west wind himself. We added this because we thought it added a more mystique to the car, but there was a glass panel here. Let's take a further look at what was behind this back when it was a galley. Here's where the steward worked. We're in the process of restoring this area as well, but you can see over here how they just paneled over that service door. We're going to have everything right through there just like they did. We're putting in refrigeration this winter. This is another service door, and this one was from outside the car, and it allowed you to load in all the essentials that you needed, along with everything that, of course, would be used on the car, could easily be loaded through here and right into the Galley. Outside, the car looks pretty much the way it did back when it was on the California Zephyr. The railroads marketed their dome cars quite heavily, and they all had different names for them too. On the Great Northern's Empire Builder, where they had a full dome over the top of the entire car, they called it the Great Dome. Atchison, Topeka, Santa Fe had the Pleasure Dome. The B&O, they called theirs the Strata Dome. The Milwaukee Road had their Super Dome. That was pretty good. And of course, on the Missouri Pacific, they called theirs the Planetarium Dome. And on the North Coast Limited, for the Northern Pacific, the Vista Dome reigns supreme. Now today, if you have a very rich friend who owns a private car that has a dome on top, you probably get to ride with them. But not a lot of us have that. So instead, you ride ours on the North Shore Scenic Railroad 7 days a week in the summer when the railroad is up and running. It's our first-class service, and it is memorable. We'll be back tomorrow with another memorable edition of our Vista Tours. On the dome or underneath, you get the best view in town right here. In the meantime, let's do what we know we have to do. Wash our hands, cover our coughs, don't touch your face, keep that social distance, and please, take care of each other.